Good morning to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. It's Saturday morning. It's a sunny Sydney winter's morning. Still a bit of a bite in that breeze, but it just is beautiful. The sky is clear, it's blue, and this afternoon we're looking forward to see how the Matildas are going to go in that bronze medal match against Sweden. I think it's going to be a tough assignment, given that Sweden are ranked number 3 in the world, but anything is possible with Sam Kerr back in the team, and the girls are fighting gallantly against England, going down 3-1, but Sam Kerr showing some moments of brilliance, and we'll see how things transpire and whether or not we get to medal in this World Cup event. But regardless of the outcome, it's been an absolute marketing success. When it comes to marketing international events, Australians are definitely world class, and not only are the marketeers world class, but the organisation and as well as the participation by spectators has been absolutely phenomenal. So we can pat ourselves on the back, Australia, as being a country that is really, really good at delivering on our promises and being a culture that supports emerging talent. One thing about Australia is, and you will notice it, that to our advantage and also to our disadvantage, is that Australia, like many Western cultures, are cultures that celebrate progress, change, and emerging trends and emerging talent. And this World Cup has proven, just like the Olympics proved in 2000, that Australians can get the job done from an administrative and from a participative perspective, and we can hold our heads up high, knowing that we can do whatever anybody else can do, and not only we can do it, but we can do it better than everybody or anybody else. What I want to do today is, whilst I've got your attention, is we'll go on a bit of a walk and talk, and we'll go through a book summary. And the book summary that I've selected to talk about today is called Attached, by a dual authorship of Amir Levine and Rachel Heller. So we've got two authors who have come together to talk about a book on relationships and attachments, and to give us a perspective, something that we can think about, something that we can consider, and hopefully incorporate some of the learnings in our own lives so we can make the most of the relationships that we have in our lives, and to be the best we possibly can be, and to also be able to categorize and identify differences in relationship styles and know how to navigate and to deal with those, so that we can get the best out of ourselves and we can also get the best out of others around us. Because when it's all said and done, some people make relationships look easy, and they're really good at managing relationships and creating connection with people be it family, friends, work peers, you name it. And they get the many benefits that come from that skill that they have. And yet others make things look much harder and tend to be disastrous when it comes to managing their relationships and enjoying the time, or not enjoying the time, should I say, with those that they have in their lives, which impacts not only them, but also the others as well. So this book's going to give us a few clues, a few tricks, a few steps to follow to try and understand ourselves, understand others, and do whatever we have to do so that we too can become masters of the relationships and the attachments that we have in our lives. So to kick off this book, what we can do is talk about some of the theory, and the theory evolved over time, just like we have science, and we look at science to tell us or to suggest to us, how to exercise and how to eat and what to learn and how to live our lives. By the same token, there is also a science of relationships. There is a science of attachment that we can at least think about and consider and see where it can lead us. And it comes from a piece of work that occurred in the 1960s by a fellow known as John Bowlby, where he looked at the parent and child bond and what he was able to ascertain back then, and the sort of thing that we all understand pretty well, especially those of us who are parents and grandparents, that it's important to have a nurturing bond with children, with family members, to be supportive and not too standoffish. And there's a fine line, I must admit, between being too helpful and not helpful enough, too warm as opposed to too cold. But this is something that we all need to consider and to learn, and to also, I guess, appreciate as well that not all children, not all people are the same. We all have different needs, we all have different styles, but to be able to work with those styles and with that type, and to engage in a dance with those around us so that we're not stepping on each other's toes, and we're giving each other an opportunity to have some fun, to express themselves, to be authentic, and to enjoy the time, the limited time, should I add as well, that we have together during the times we have in our lifetime. Because the thing that I've learnt is that if you sit down with a stopwatch and measure the amount of quality time that you have with your partner, your friends, your family, and the people that you really want to spend time with in your life, the people who you love and who love you, the amount of time really as elapsed time isn't all that much. Because when we catch up, we're distracted, we've got other things, we've got other people to talk to. The amount of one-on-one quality time that we get to share these days is very, very limited, to say the least. But let's get back to this book here, where the author was able to identify that there are three types of people, three types of attachment styles that people express and exhibit. And the first one is detailed as being of an anxious type. People who are anxious and they are preoccupied with the relationships that they are in, and they are worried to death about their partner's ability to love them back. So type 1 is an anxious connection type, an anxious attachment type, and they're the people that you normally see as just being sensitive and not being able to get comfortable in their relationships and are always needing to prove themselves. The second type that the author talks about, which came from this John Bowlby style of study in the 60s, is that there are people who are avoidant, people who hold people at arm's length. And we've all got these people in our lives, people who, doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter what you say, doesn't matter what you give them, how much time you give them, they will always keep you at a distance. But it's important, as this author says, to know that it's not their fault. That is their style. And the style comes from a combination of genetics as well as experiential, the experiences that those people have enjoyed or endured throughout their lives. So the avoidant sort of people are the people who strive for, who crave for independence and think and believe that by showing intimacy, being too closely connected with some other people, they get to lose their independence. And this is quite prevalent within our Western society these days, because Western society, Australia, America, England, many of the European countries, value independence above all other. And it's more important in some people's view, culturally, to be self-sufficient, to be self-capable, to be independent, not to be dependent. And they think that this, and only this, is the highest form of existence. But we'll talk about that a little bit later when I refer to what Steve Covey said about the highest level of existence being interdependence. We need to understand that we need to be both dependent and independent. We need to depend on each other, and others need to depend on us. And that is what love is all about. Giving up of yourself and receiving from others of themselves in a dance. But we'll talk about that a little bit more soon. The third category that the author talks about here, or the authors talk about, is the secure type of attachment, the secure type of relationship, the people who are comfortable, the people who go with the flow, the people who don't overinvest, overcommit, or overindulge in other people, the people who don't necessarily drain the other person, the people who are more trusting, the people who accept others for what they are. And the call to action from these authors is that we all need to spend some time thinking about these three different styles and at the same time trying to figure out what style we are ourselves. And according to the statistics, 50% of people fall into the secure type, 30% fall into the anxious type, 20% or 25% fall into the anxious or the avoidant type. So they're both pretty similar, and 5% are either a mix of anxious and avoidant. So what we've got here is that the majority of people being stable, being secure in their relationship and attachment type, being quite balanced, one could say. And then there are people who fall into the avoidant type and people who fall into the anxious type, and a mix of both avoidant and anxious. So the trick for each and every one of us is to figure out where we sit in those have 4 quadrants, and also where the others in our lives sit within those quadrants. And to build roadmaps, to build bridges in terms of how to connect and how to best work with the others based on the style that they have, knowing very well, as we said before, that the style comes from a variety of contributions, one being genetic. Some people are more inclined to be friendly and secure, other people are more inclined to be anxious, others are more inclined to be standoffish and avoidant, and also culturally and experientially, depending on what sort of family you grow up in, depending on which country you grow up in, depending on what sort of culture, what organisation, what school, who you hang out with. All of those things are going to influence significantly what style you adopt and how you see yourself and how you hold yourself out to other people. And to understand that at the end of the day, when you're in a relationship with other people, and given that we are social beings, humans are very social indeed, we are social beings, and there is a desire for us to work and live with others to varying degrees of connection. We all need to depend on each other. We need to be dependable, because going back in time to when humans were in their first sort of iteration, we needed to depend on each other to hunt and gather food, to protect one another from wild attacks from beasts and predators, from attacks from other tribes and people, and to make sure that we can keep the fires going and to keep the family going as well. So it's important to understand that we all have a responsibility and a duty to each other to keep each other alive and to help each other survive and to work with others. And as we said before, Steve Covey said we need to be interdependent. Now, we start life dependent as a child, as a baby, and we can't possibly survive without the input from our parents and our carers and our helpers. And then we get to a stage where we grow up and we want to become independent, and we think that we've achieved everything by being independent. My 3-year-old granddaughter now, Elizabeth, is going through a stage where she wants to do everything on her own, to the point where she has fits of rage if anybody interrupts her when she's trying to do something on her own, which is quite sweet and it's quite funny. But she'll get to an age, like we all get to an age, where we realise that being independent, being self-sufficient is great, but there comes a point where you need to give and receive in a dance, in a universal hug with family and friends, in order to fit in, to contribute, and for others to contribute to your life and you to contribute to other people's lives. And we're socially programmed to connect as well. Admittedly, these days, more so than any other time in the history of mankind, society, Western society, provides a foundation to enable people to live very, very independent, selfish lives. You can have your 1-bedroom apartment, you can go out and eat by yourself, you can go to the movies by yourself, you can travel by yourself, you can do lots and lots of things these days by yourself, and it's not seen anymore as being something which is odd or a disadvantage. Some people have it as a badge of pride to say that they live on their own, they do everything on their own, and they don't have to depend on anybody. But lo and behold, there will come a time for all of us where we'll get sick, we'll get old, we'll get fragile, and we'll need the help of others around us, regardless of how strong you think you are or how good you think you are. The reality is, at some point in time, everybody needs the support and help of others. And the author here goes on to say something quite profound and quite interesting, that people are only as needy as their unmet needs. And for that reason, we need to let people do what they have to do in their lives, to live their lives, so that they don't get to the point where they're 40 or 50 and feel like they haven't lived their lives, and at the point of time of their lives when they need to be focused on family, focused on their careers and that they're not having a midlife crisis and going off and doing things which are going to just destroy them and their families as well. So we're only as needy as our unmet needs. So sometimes, of course, we need to re-examine what our needs are and to be realistic, to think about, first of all, the age that we're at, the responsibilities that we have, the people around us that we have in our lives, and whether or not the needs, our unmet needs, are selfish, are irrational needs, just to tick a box. And I must admit, with social media, Instagram, TikTok, and all the other social media platforms that we have available to us, it is really hard because there are a lot of people out there portraying themselves as having a perfect, amazing life. But it's only, of course, a facade, because their life is probably more messed up than what our lives are, and yet they're able to theatrically create the aura that they are celebrity-like in their lifestyle, and they're connected with everybody and everybody loves them and this, that and the other, whereas the opposite could possibly be true as well. So the author then here reminds us that Western culture is selling the concept of self-reliance, setting up boundaries, being selfish, independent. But it's a dependency paradox is what Steve Covey and this author reminds us of, because we are all dependent in some ways. We need to be authentic. We need to accept our flaws, to know that we're not perfect because we live in an imperfect world, and to accept it rather than torment ourselves wanting to be what is impossible to be other than in the movies and on social media. Because what we've learnt is that we all desperately need support in order to grow and develop, not only as a child, but also as an adult and as a senior citizen. People need to have safety in their relationships around them, because we need emotional nourishment. We need people to approve of us, to validate us, not because we're insecure, but it's the way people are. We just need to make sure that what we're doing is appreciated, what we're doing is valued, and what we're doing is something that is God-pleasing. What we're doing is serving God. We're loving God with all our heart, mind and soul, and we're loving our neighbour as we love ourselves. So we need to be on track, I guess is the best way of putting it, and to make sure that we're comforted and by the people around us, and that we feel secure in our relationships with the people, and that's why families are so important. There's a tendency for a lot of families to break up, but by breaking up the family, what you're doing is you're damaging the product of that family. You're damaging irreparably, in some ways, the children, because all children want their parents to love each other, because it's through their parents that children feel validated, just like this whale and this baby whale. They feel validated by being in relationships with each other, mother, father, child, sibling. That's the building block of our society, and that's what emotionally nourishes us, being validated. And to think that people can break up and divorce and separate and go their own ways without having an impact is quite sad, because at the end of the day, each person, each couple, each family, each child, they're part of a connection. They're part of an attachment called family, friends, community. And whenever a couple separates or divorces, they break apart. Friendships, when two people separate, the friendships that those two had together are no longer as valid. They're not validated anymore. The children are not validated, because the children, as I said, are a product of the love of the father and the mother. And if they separate, go their own ways, marry other people and have other families, then all of a sudden those children feel, rightfully or wrongfully, I don't know, but they must feel different. They must feel let down. They must feel as if they're not a product of love, or that product of love that occurred when they were born or when they were conceived is not necessarily a true love. So the call to action from these authors is to make sure that people are effective in their communication, that they meet and they date and they marry the right person, a person that aligns with their attachment style, so that they don't break up, they don't break apart, and they don't damage the family later on in life. Because at the end of the day, safe relationships create nourished individuals who are validated. And the author also goes to say that a good family, a good attachment, an effective attachment is also important to one's health, both mental, physical, emotional, etc. It impacts a person's family and health in a big and dramatic way. Just like relationships take energy, they also provide energy. You can feel fulfilled. You can feel on top of the world if you feel loved and can give love, giving and receiving love by people around you. But once again, it all gets back to what attachment style you have, what attachment style others have, and to be able to use that knowledge to be able to get the best outcome in trying situations. Something, life is up and down, as we know. Partners' moods change. Everything goes through, a flow. So at the end of the day, the author here is saying that regardless of your style, then we need to work at creating, an environment of success. We need to keep our promises. We need to plan. We need to effectively communicate. We need to be caring, we need to be fair, we need to be able to compromise and to be sensitive to other people's styles, knowing that the anxious person is always in threat detection. They're preoccupied with how to make the relationship work. They're fretful, they're sensitive, they're hand holders, huggers, kissers, and they need reassurance all the time. So if you're in a relationship with somebody who needs reassurance all the time, then give them reassurance without it being a burden. If you need reassurance, tell your partner that it's your style, it's your attachment style that you have developed either through genetically or through experience in your life, something that you can't really change, because what you've got is yours. You can't deny it. You've got to be authentic. You've got to live your authentic style at the end of the day. There's no use changing your style just to please others and not feel and not to deliver on your needs, your needs, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Your unfulfilled needs. So if you've got unfulfilled needs, then you need to fulfill them, is the bottom line. And the only way to fulfill them is to label them, is to communicate them effectively, and to understand that the avoidant sort of person will hold you at arm's length. And they offer mixed signals, and this is where the problem lies, that the avoidant person in the beginning could be very warm, could be very charming, could be very charismatic. But what happens is that once you signal to them that you're interested, they may go into their shell again, because these people need space. They need to be independent. And this is where the problem is when you get a needy person, an anxious person, with an avoidant person, then you're going to have problems, knowing very well that that avoidant person wasn't always avoidant. In the beginning, there were mixed signals. They were very interested, they were very charming, they were very funny. And what happens with a lot of couples is that they spend years and years and years together, because one of the members of those couples remembers that person when they first met them and thought that that's who they really were. But as we're saying, and as we're seeing here, the avoidant person was actually exhibiting mixed signals and sucking the other person in. So once again, there may come a time where you realise that the person that you're with isn't really the person that you thought was going to be the person. They end up becoming somebody else. And we need to spend some time, as we said, decoding who we are and who your partner is. But it's all about effective communication. We need to spell it out very, very clearly, especially at the beginning of the relationship, before you get too connected or too into each other. Because as we know, love is blind, and once you tick a few boxes in the beginning, so once we get those mixed signals, as we said there with the avoidant person in the beginning, once you get those mixed signals and then you look back, you need to make sure that you communicate to the other person saying, well, this is what I thought that I was getting into, but it looks as if I may have made a mistake. We need to be able to decode, we need to spell it out early, and we need to be effective in our communication as opposed to trying to be efficient. It's going to be difficult to be effective in communication because you need to call things out. And you need to understand that there's a how and a when, that you need to be brave to be able to talk about certain things, and you need to be able to fight, but fight right. Don't fight about things which are not worth fighting about, and we need to pay attention to each other and to each other's needs, and to understand, as we mentioned before, each person's style so that we make the best effort we possibly can to find the right partner, to live with the right partner, and to enjoy the fruits of being in a good relationship with a good partner throughout our lives, because it'll enhance our lives, it'll make life better for all of us, for you and your partner and your children and your circle of friends and family and everybody who comes into contact with you. Anyway, take care everybody. Thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Jim's 5am Club. It's been a long sort of vlog, but I really got into it this morning, and I just hope that you too can get into it. Spread the word about my YouTube vlog and what I do, and hopefully you can benefit and gain from it as well. Yassas, take care, and bye for now.